All right, everybody's still kind of coming in, but welcome everybody to the degree-wide Zoom. We have a fun night planned for us here to give you guys just a kind of an idea of how the night's going to flow. We have two guests tonight. One is from the Los Angeles Film School Career Placement Department to give us kind of like an overview of how he's going to interact with you guys. His name is Kevin Bannerman, to make sure I said it right. And then after Kevin, we have Chris Penny here that you guys have saw obviously in the post in Discord on his background. He's going to tell us a little bit about what he does, and I don't want to give too much away because it's part of what he wants to talk about. So at this point, if you don't mind just muting your mics and also turning off your cameras, I am going to turn it over to Kevin and let him talk.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for letting me join in for a few minutes. I am going to give you all a little quick background on the Career Development Department and our website, the Career Connect website. I am your career advisor. And, for those of you, especially who are getting close to graduation, I am going to look forward to meeting you all, hopefully, sometime in the summer, and go over how and where and to look for jobs and how to be prepared and all that kind of stuff. And then for those of you who are earlier in the program, anytime you want to, feel free to reach out to me if you just want to share like what your thoughts on what your career might be or where you're looking to go or looking to focus in on. I'm always happy to have those conversations with everybody. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And just give you this little presentation. Okay, so career development. So I am your career advisor, as I said. Here's my email, kbannerman@lafilm.edu. Feel free to utilize that. I just want you to know that each program in the film school has its own team working for you and helping to support you as you get close to graduation, and more importantly, as you graduate and make your way into the workforce. So we have an industry outreach team. Their job is to contact potential employers, to build relationships between them and the film school, and most importantly, to find career and job opportunities for the graduates. Sometimes those are going to be full-time jobs. Sometimes they might be freelance, and they might be internships, whatever. We're looking at all kinds of opportunities for you all. We have a graduate outreach team. They may reach out to you 6 months, a year after you graduate and just see how you're doing, see if you're working, see if you're not working, if you need any help, if you need additional advising. A lot of times grads get out there and they don't know that our services extend to them for as long as the school is standing. And we don't know sometimes that you might need help unless you let us know that
we're not getting sound.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin, we can't hear you.
got it. I came
There you
back
go.
without sound.
There, okay, there you go.
Thanks so much for calling that out. So anyhow, so graduate outreach, again, going to contact you, see how you're doing, see if you need additional help, if you're working or not working, checking in on you. Then we have the alumni relations team. They do alumni sponsored events. Every couple months, there's something going on with them. And so you want to pay attention to that. You want to make sure you join up with them, and you'll learn all about that when you get really right on the cusp of graduation. Oh, okay, so what do we got here? Okay, now my PowerPoint. Oh, here we go. Okay, it seems alive now. So very important for you all. We have our own website, which is the Career Connect website. The URL is up there, and I will also post this in the chat. This is a way for you to be able to create a personal profile. You can list your software skills. You can create a profile on what kind of jobs you are looking for, what kind of companies you want to work for. You can set up alerts for job postings that might be in any kind of a company you want to work for, again, a category, a specific job based on where your focus is. You can also schedule an appointment with me through that. When you go onto your homepage, the first time you log in, all your basic information is already loaded there, and you just can click on schedule an appointment and click through that and set up an appointment with me. One of the things that Career Development does that we do post up on the Career Connect site, we have a workshop series, which is happening once a month right now. We're actually doing one on deep diving into Career Connect and the job hunt coming up at the end of this month. We did one on interviewing skills, like how to be a great interview, one on networking. We're doing one on resume writing. So these are happening on a monthly basis. Check out Career Connect for the postings on when the next one is coming up. We have what we call industry insider events, exactly what you guys are doing today with Chris. We just did one with Sarah Barella. I think some of you attended that. She and her colleague, Andrea Oxley from Disney TV Animation did a great presentation on sort of what their pipeline is and then what the opportunities are with them, and amazing tips on how to prepare portfolio, resume, cover letter, all those tools that you need to apply and introduce yourself to them. A couple of weeks ago, we had India Harvey, who was the internship coordinator and the studio manager for Stepped Productions, and they have a whole bunch of different kinds of paid internships, including one for visual effects artists. So she just closed down the applications last week, but that was something we sent out to everybody to make sure that everyone knew about that. We interviewed Kevin Lima a couple months ago, who directed Enchanted, a Goofy movie, and Disney's Tarzan. So they're all over the place, the kind of programs that we do. These are all kind of animation centric or touch on the program, but we do them for every one of our programs, and everyone's invited to any one they might want to attend. If you can attend, we always record them and we post them on the Career Connect site, so you can find the links to that easily enough. If you have any problem with that, please let me know. Most importantly, for those of you that are heading toward graduation, we have a jobs portal. It does not open up to you until you are within 3 months from graduation. Obviously, we want you to stay focused on your education and not off looking for jobs, and that would pull you away from that focus. But as you get closer to graduation, we have the jobs portal open up to you. We will have both curated and sourced jobs posted. So sourced jobs are ones we just pull off from jobs boards, and we'll put them up there, and it's up to you to kind of click through and go ahead and find those and apply to those. We don't have a connection to those. But curated jobs are opportunities where we're in touch with the employer, and we will collect generally the resumes and the portfolio links and all that, and then pass them along to the employer. And that's really doing you as a quality check that everything you present is like really ready to go. There's no typos on a resume. Your portfolio is awesome. Your demo reel is great. Whatever it may be, it's we curate the jobs in a way to make sure that the very best you is presented to the employer. We do, in those kind of situations, need you to have your resume uploaded to Career Connect, and it has to be a Word document. The system itself will turn it to a PDF, but if you upload a PDF, it's locked and we can't search you. And we actually have the ability to do word searches, much like any kind of resume scanning software. We want to be able to locate you by your skill set, by the software that you know, by what your career focus is. So if you go on the Career Connect site, you will see a button for document uploads, and you can just click on that and upload your resume. If you do that, I actually get notified that you've put a resume up there. I can go and review it, give you notes through the system, and then you can, if you need to do tweaks on that resume, you can do it, or you can schedule an appointment with me to go over those. That is pretty much it. So I just want to thank everybody for that. And it was a very kind of brief introduction, but I really want you all to know that the virtual door to my virtual office is open whenever you need to contact me. So I'll put my information in the chat. And again, thank you very much for your time and your attention. And back to you, Ken.
Yep. And Kevin is also on our Discord. So if you guys see him on our Discord channel, you can feel free to chat with him there if you want to as well. All right. So to be honest with you, I can't tell you how long I've actually known the next presenter. To be honest, I think it's probably been about 8 to 10 years. I don't know. That's probably longer.
11. Yeah.
It's been a while.
He was an intern.
Yeah, he's been there a while. So, but I'm going to let him talk. So this is my good friend Chris Penny. Awesome scripter, awesome character rigger, and I want you guys to ask as many questions as you want. Put him on the spot. I used to do that to him all the time, so he's used to it. So if you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. And I'm going to just turn it over to him. And Chris, if you need anything, I'm here. I'm just going to turn off my camera so you can talk.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Nice to meet you. I just first off like to iterate how important the career development team was for me. So just to echo Kevin's words, you guys please take advantage of that. I know a lot of fellow students that didn't, but they really helped me out, get my resume to the level that was way above where I was when I started. That being said, again, my name is Christopher Penny. My friends call me Crispy. I've been doing technical artist work for some odd 10 years now. Several film houses. So I worked, just a little background on me. I worked at Real Effects for a couple of years. I've worked at Method Studios, some VFX and commercial houses. I've worked in episodic work too, which is basically computer animation for this company called Nerdcore in Vancouver. And I've worked at Leica for a little bit. They do stop motion animation. I did a little stint at Nike. And now I'm currently working at ZeniMax Online, which is the underneath the publisher of Bethesda that does Elder Scrolls Online and you know, a lot of other video games, such as like they're under the Bethesda publishing, which if you've read in the news lately, recently got bought by Microsoft, but they are published games like Doom and Fallout 76, and you know, the list kind of goes on and on. I see that there's a question already in the chat, and I'll just read it aloud. That did I end up doing most of the work that I thought I would do when I graduated, or did I end up going in another direction like so many of us do? To be honest, when I was in school, I thought I was going to be a character modeler. And I believe I can speak to the audience that you guys already are aware of the entire computer animation pipeline. But that slowly changed as my education continued. I'd always been really good with computers and, you know, able to use them pretty fluently. But it wasn't really computers that got me into the position that I am. It's problem solving. It's something that I super enjoy. I've always liked putting together puzzles. So it's the perfect position for me for that regard. You know, if you like putting together puzzles and helping people, honestly, and being like the you know, supportive personality that likes to communicate effectively, those things I think go leaps and bounds. while you're in school, consider there are, two sides of the brain. There's like a creative, emotional side, right? And then there's your logic, scientific side. If you find that you balance between those two very well, then this quite possibly might be a good career path for you, you too. It became really apparent to me when I was going through school that I was surrounded by creatives who did not absorb the technical side as well or as quickly as I did. And so I just latched onto that because I also didn't swing that pendulum as far as say full-on computer engineering, like, deep code programming patterns that are, heavy into C# or C+, like our engine team here. And so just kind of knowing where you sit on the spectrum, I think can really help push you through that. And then I see another question here that if you find being a people person is a particular advantage in this industry, and there's a lot of the comment is I notice a lot of team players in the animation world, and most definitely a lot of the reason that I enjoy what I do is because together we can make something better than we could individually. So I find that being that support role, I know you can't see here in the background, but I have a lot of musical equipment. I've always enjoyed playing the bass, which is a support role. And so people person, might be a little specific, but just being easy enough to work with. And honestly, that just comes down to communication skills, which isn't always talking, but it takes as much as a listening as it does to communicate. So yeah, definitely I would say people person is an advantage. Like my network has gotten me the opportunities that I've had. I mean, it has been, there's an element that I believe in luck is where preparation and coincidence meet. I think it's coincidence, but the point being that, that when you're prepared, it's where preparation and opportunity meet. Yeah, there you go. So if you're prepared for the opportunity when it happens, then you're able to take advantage of it. And I was lucky enough to have people that I met through school were able to get jobs, and I kept in touch with them. I've been able to get several of my friends' jobs too that I knew in school. And the people that I give jobs are people that were easy to work with. They were easy to communicate with, and they were good at what they did. And as you're going through school and just casually socializing, I think there's an element that's always present as far as that goes. That your network is definitely important. So yeah, and of course right now it's a bit difficult. Even to be honest, I started this job in March of last year or in January of last year, and 2 months later, we're all working from home pretty constantly, and so we have to force communication. But taking advantage of situations like this, where you can kind of be in have the similar experience. The chats I see that you guys have on Discord are going crazy. So yeah, keeping in contact with those people is LinkedIn I found to be a great professional playground, not Facebook necessarily as much. And don't be afraid to reach out to people that are working at companies that you want to work at. Or my probably biggest piece of advice, if you reach out cold call to somebody on LinkedIn that you don't know, is make it a personal message attached to it. Don't just send an invite and expect them to accept it, but write a note that's something that you handwrite that shows that personal interest that you have for the reason why you want to connect with that person. There have been a few people that that I have accepted on LinkedIn just because their introductory, was so unique, or they took the time to write it, to make it personal. So I would definitely recommend that for keeping in contact, and don't be afraid to just reach out. If you haven't spoken to somebody in a couple of years after school, there's nothing saying, and they, you notice they get a position at a place that you want to work. There's nothing saying that you can't reach out and just say, hey, how's it going? I see that you work here. How do you feel about that place? I see there's an opening that I might be perfect, that I'd love to, reach out for, and then just do it. The worst they can say is no, right? Like, at the end of the day, there's nothing lost. So yeah. So I don't know if I honestly have never done this before. So this is, and Zoom is a little new for me. So I was going to move into doing a presentation. Unless you guys have any other questions. I see that my portfolio, is it on LinkedIn, or do I have a personal site attached to my resume? In fact, I do not, which is very unusual for someone in this field. However, most of my experience is in pipeline. And so for those that aren't aware, I can post up some videos about tech art, but maybe even answering that question would be a good place to start, even before the demo, of what is, a tech artist. And to easily answer that is not something that I think can be done. There is a wide variety from people that write shading algorithms to people that make front-end tools that write the tools that users actually interact with, UI more focused experiences, to people that focus on the pipeline where they are passing files around, right? And you're making the artist's ability to save and load their work further down the pipeline pretty much effortless, so they don't have to think about it, and you can manage that and wrangle that for them. So I've been doing that most of my career. So for that reason, I don't really have a portfolio. But what I did is go through all the projects and link them and their IMDb pages that I worked on in my LinkedIn, which is kind of a portfolio. But for someone that does pipeline, I don't have a specific shot, or well, at least lately that I've worked on. I just kind of help move the whole project forward in a sense. Sometimes I feel like, if you guys have seen Office Space, and the guy talks about, he goes from the programmers to the consumer, so he's like sometimes I feel like that guy. But at the end of the day, we're, the need for my position comes at a much larger studio. So when they're if there was 5 or 6 people working together, it's not really necessary. But when you start talking about 20 or 30 even, it becomes extremely necessary to provide them an easy way to kind of work together. And I have always been working with the studio. That was another question in the chat. I don't freelance. It's hard for pipeline to freelance, mainly because it's an investment that usually goes across multiple projects somewhat. And so for that reason, usually they want in-house, and usually they want you to move. So to consider, that's also a consideration, as I've moved around quite a bit, but to be open to that possibility has led to a lot of great opportunities. Would I consider myself an insider guy who helps people with their process? I'm not really sure I understand that question, but feel free to reach out to me after the presentation too. I'm on Discord, and we can chat there if you'd like to, just so I can understand maybe a little more of what you're asking. And I might drop some more links in Discord too, just about what is tech art. I'm becoming. There was a recent Unreal live stream on becoming a tech artist and a GDC boot camp that I'd love to share with you guys, just to see if you're interested. It's something that that I find to be incredibly intriguing as a career. I've never gotten bored, and that was exactly what I was looking for all through school. That's a great question. What got me into this industry? I grew up playing video games. I always tell this story in interviews, but my dad was military, so we moved around a lot. So video games were consistent. They were one of the only constants for me. And so I grew up playing them, but I also got involved in music. When I was in college, I got involved with ceramics as well, and I found that I didn't want, I didn't want a suit and tie job. I didn't want to work at a bank, but I also didn't want to be. I started to feel like art for me was a very personal thing, and I really was attracted to the what they consider the crafts of an art. So, nailing all that down and realizing that I liked both I liked to be involved with artists. I love to, artists have a very down-to-earth personality sometimes, or the opposite of, which is very fun. And so I knew that balancing those were very important to me, that I wanted to be creative as well as technical, if at all possible. So that really set my sights on trying to get into video games, but it was very disparaging for the past couple of years based off of the industry and the way that they have treated their employees, which I'm sure you're all aware of. But film doesn't have a much better history either of just constant overtime, working a lot of people to exhaustive ends. But truth be told, during the interview process, all that stuff comes out and you can always ask very openly about it. And most places, if not all of the ones that I've interviewed with, are very open about their policies and whether or not, they're concerned with the employees will tell you if they're concerned with the employees versus the bottom line. And so just navigating through that and finding a place that cares about you as an employee is important too. So yeah, so I guess just one more question that says here, how has the Microsoft acquisition impacted Bethesda and your workload at the studio? Or is it too soon? I mean, it is too soon, but we're all kind of excited about the prospect, at least on my team right now. Microsoft doesn't have a history of coming in and, forcing, their desire. Like they didn't buy us as an avenue for change. They purchased us because Bethesda has a unique history with creating a large amount of different, unique, independent games with different studios and allowing the information to kind of be shared across studios without being forced. So I think good things will come out of it. In terms of my workload directly, it hasn't changed. They're not enforcing like a Microsoft lifestyle. If anything, they're allowing their resources to be utilized in a way that we can all to help us better it. So I think it's good things for the future in terms of how that is. So So yeah, I can't remember exactly how long we have here. But I appreciate the comments and the questions. Please keep them coming. I guess I think I can still see them when I share my screen. Again, please be patient with me. I'm not as familiar with Zoom as I am other video situations. But let's see if I can't do this without messing everything up.
Chris, while you're sharing screens, if I see one, I'll just shout it out to you as well. So,
If you see one what?
a question. If I see a
Oh.
question pop up, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So here we go. And I don't know if you guys actually have a story about this. So my desktop changes all the time. But this one actually came up right before the presentation. And I just want to point out how important it is to not take yourself too seriously. When I was in school, I remember Ken, I was actually a student of Ken's, and he used to talk about how the industry would play Nerf war, or they would bring Nerf guns to work, and that was an element of the industry. And of course, whether or not I believed him at the time, it sounded like a fun thing to take part in. So I rallied together the students, and we all had Nerf guns, and we showed up at school with Nerf guns, and we kind of had a blast. And then they got me back when I graduated by pretending that they wanted me to stand up in front of a podium for my presentation at graduation, and then they all shot me with Nerf guns. And as memorable as that was, I really didn't believe that was part of the industry. When I was at Real Effects, we used to play this game called Zombies, where it was basically just it was a form of Nerf gun or it was Assassins. It was a form of Nerf gun war where you find a fellow employee, outside of campus, and then shoot them with a Nerf gun, and then you work your way up the ladder in a sense. So yeah, again, I just wanted to lay that as a kind of a reminder that sometimes networking is not taking yourself too seriously, and just enjoying the ride. So I guess I can put this over here. You guys don't need to see that. So what I wanted to talk about today briefly is viewer states in Houdini, and that's just because it's a fairly new thing that Houdini's done in, I think, 18. They're Python viewer states, and they give you the ability to do a lot of really cool custom things that I'm not sure if any other package really handles it this way, but it really makes it approachable. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open some of the example files just to kind of briefly go over those. So I don't know if you can see if you can read this or not in on the video, but the root is your Houdini folder, right? And then in viewer states is examples, and this should be available with every install of Houdini. So it gives you a great starting point to really dive into some of these viewer states. And again, like something that I'm constantly doing is the Houdini docs. I probably read those more than the average person. So anytime you have questions, like I would definitely not hesitate. Oh, you know what I did? Don't look behind the mask. I think I need to set up my VPN so I can actually get a license. I was hoping I didn't have to, because I didn't want to degrade the quality of the. Sorry, just one moment. hopefully not crash Houdini. Yeah. Awesome. Live demos are so great. So let's try that again. We'll just. So yeah, as I was saying, you know, documentation for Houdini is unique in how good I have found it to be personally compared to other DCCs. Oh, and sorry, DCC means digital content creator. That's one of those industry acronyms that even took me a while to get a handle on. But I have found that, you know, compared to say Maya or Nuke, their focus really is on kind of the user experience and providing you with the tools to be able to kind of wander off on your own and utilize their tool set as a basis for creating your own experience essentially. So the viewer state stuff is super thorough. Excuse me. You can run through and create, you know, it goes through step by step pretty much how to do and how to, you know, implement most of the states. So should you need a kind of fallback after this, like highly recommend it in terms of that. But I'm also going to show you another easy way because Houdini has several of those in place to be able to kind of write your own. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of set the stage for the problem that we're trying to solve. So let's say user wants to have, no, this is not what I wanted to see. This is what I want to see. Sorry about this again. I had it all set up just fine and willing to go, and then it just had to crash. So yeah, so we have a user that, let's say they want to control the number of columns that are in a tube, right? Why doesn't that one? Oh, because it's not geometry. So we'll just make that a polygon, and then you can see we can control the cube. So this is an arbitrary example, but I wanted to give a kind of visual representation of the way that we control parameters in Houdini and how you can attach that to viewer states. So essentially, that's what we're going to do and be able to allow that to be handled in the viewport itself. But even before I do that, let me take a step back and see if I can open this demo. So as you'll see, Houdini loves the pig head, and this is one of my favorite viewer states because it allows you to do a lot, but it might be a little overwhelming at first. But again, I just want to set the stage for what is, you know, possible using a viewer state. So you can see that it's now following my mouse, the selection basically. Underneath it is, you know, giving you the normal direction and the highlighted geometry underneath. You can see when the mouse off of it, all of the geometry itself is highlighted and the points are highlighted. And so that is, you know, super powerful when it comes to creating a custom experience in Houdini. You can see that through, you know, their parameter interface, you could do things like change the color. We can make it, you know, we can make it purple, which is always fun. And then you can even change how literally every aspect of the viewer state is handled. And as well as you can use these, you know, these example files as like great test beds for trying to figure out how they do stuff, right? So if you'll notice, this is kind of the their node graph that they have up here. let's see. And so every viewer state is attached to a custom node, right? So that when this node is highlighted and selected, and you hit enter on the keyboard, that will enter you into that node's viewer state. And how that's all set up is, it's just referenced right here on the parameters. So all I did here was open the type properties of the node. And then in that type properties, you can see that the name of the default state that's brought up when you press enter is there. So if you dive into some of these example files, you can kind of pick them apart to figure out how to use whatever they're doing for maybe your own nefarious needs, which again, part of, a part of tech art is taking things apart, putting them back together, hopefully not having any pieces left over. But I found that I love to do that too. I'm just always very interested in how things work. So if you want to see the code that actually runs this viewer state, if you go into, I believe it's the viewer state browser, and then in these viewer states, you can find the path right to, maybe if I make the window a little bigger, right to the py file that actually controls that viewer state. So then you can start, diving in really deep into picking it apart and doing exactly, making it do what you want it to do. Yeah, so what we're going to do is something a bit simpler, but I wanted to kind of give you a ground up way, to do that. I wanted to start from nothing and show you how I would approach solving that as a problem. So let me set up my, so we're here. And again, we want to control this tube in such a way that it will allow us to control the columns. So it's really easy to do that, and I think again that Houdini has made this really approachable. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a digital asset. And again, I'm not sure exactly how familiar you guys are with Houdini, but digital assets are just like a custom node, so we'll make this our demo because that's what we're doing. And with the ability to, let's just destroy all the parameters or spares. So the first thing it does is bring up, the parameter window, which you can do the other way with just right clicking on it. But in this parameter window, we have an interactive tab. And the cool thing about this interactives tab is it has the viewer states tab in it. And it also has this nifty little button called new, where it basically allows you to select all of the things that you might have caught in the documentation. So there's like this mouse event. If we get actually into the docs, you would see that there's basically all of the events here that you can use to intercept and then do something custom. Like you can deal with the handle directly. So when the user drags the handle, you can update, a variety of things. You can do it based off of the selection, the mouse just moving around, the mouse wheel. So I think what we're going to do is let's have every time the mouse wheel scrolls, we'll just adjust that column parameter, right? So that way, I just wanted a quick demo to show you guys how to connect things in a viewer state. So if I just accept that, you can see here that it gives us a great outline to be able to work with. And the way that node viewer states work is that this node, again, if we look in the type properties, which we're already here, and in the node, you can see that the default state is demo. So by default, it recognizes that the HDA name is the state, and that will call this demo state. So that's loaded because it's part of the demo, it's part of the HDA, it's internal. But there's nothing preventing you from, say, writing a custom one that gets loaded on demand based off of being able to put it in the project, the Houdini path. You can put some in viewer states. Each pipeline is different. We add our custom paths where we write our tools. We add those to the Python path on load. So we have a launcher that handles all that for us. But there's a couple of different ways. So it doesn't have to be inside Houdini, but this is a nice way to package it all up together. So the first thing that we want to do is connect the parameter to our mouse wheel movement, right? That's kind of the point of this, is that when we're in the viewer state, we want to scroll the mouse wheel and have that increase and decrease the amount of columns that this is made out of. So the first thing we need is the node. Well, the keyword arguments that get passed into the mouse event happens to contain the node that you're working with, and it's always this node on the surface. So if we do that, then we can get the node, and then I'll give you a hint on how to get the scroll wheel. So if we want to do that, that's the UI event. And then we want to, this is all in the documentation for Houdini. We want to get the device, and then we want to get the mouse wheel. And that'll tell us if we're increasing or decreasing the scroll wheel. And then, what we'll do, because I'm kind of letting you dive into how I think, is I'll just print that out, just so I can see what's going to happen when I actually scroll the wheel in there. And if everything goes okay, when we hit apply, then it all goes through. And nothing, it says demo loaded and unloaded. So look at that, nothing broke, which is awesome. So then what we can do is, if you click in the viewport and you hit enter, you should see that your state is now active. So this says demo, right? And I think these are relative to the geometry being an HDA of the demo, but just ignore those for now. What we really want to do is see what happens when we scroll our mouse wheel. And this is me scrolling it up. You can see there's a bunch of ones, and then if I scroll it down, there's a bunch of negative ones. So I think in order to, so it can tell you, basically the scroll wheel is telling us if it goes up or down. So another thing we're going to need to do is probably record the scroll wheel state as part of the state, so we can then increase and decrease that number. And that might sound complicated, but essentially all we're doing is saying, hey, I want to know what the scroll wheel is as a constant. So when I initialize this state, right, I'm going to not only record the name and the scene viewer, which are relevant to Houdini. It's magic. It's black magic. I couldn't tell you exactly how it works. But those two things always seem to be present. But the scroll wheel, we can initialize as nothing. And then we'll use this to update the scroll wheel. So again, Python has this fancy syntax that we can just take that value and then add it and equal a new value. So if I plus equals, then that will take whatever the scroll wheel currently is at, and then it will, add it to. So if it's a negative number, it'll take it away for me. So again, if I hit apply, I should see that it went away. There's no errors because it will pop up an error window, and we can see that it got loaded again. So that means we can try it again. And if we pop over to the Python shell, you can see that if I increase the number, this is the window that I was talking about. It looks like something happened while we were doing that, and that scroll wheel wasn't defined. And that's because I printed it out just after. And I didn't include I didn't include the object namespace. Namespaces are so important. So I'll apply it again. We'll look over here and see that it still got reloaded. And then if we enter the state, we should be able to scroll and you can see the number increasing as I go up and then decreasing as I go down. Whenever I'm working, I like to break things into what I consider moments of clarity. So the reason I didn't just run through all of this and then add it to the parm and then try to backtrack and figure out why it didn't work is I like to break down everything into bits and pieces of known moments that work. So that way I know when something breaks, or I know when I did something wrong, and I can pinpoint that and then move forward. In other words, instead of just making everything all at once, I like to take my time to print stuff out as early as possible, or log it, or just so I don't get myself in a bind. And I find that I tend to work faster because of that. And then once you have more pieces in place, you can start to spin more of those plates. So that being said, now that we have the scroll wheel, we need to set the node on the parameter, or sorry, the parameter on the node, right? We were gonna dive into here, into this node, and then we're gonna try to set the columns. So in order to do that, what I usually like to do is just handle that also manually, right? I don't want to get the viewer state code involved with that yet. I want to figure out, okay, well, how can I do that using, and this is one of the reasons I love working in Houdini more than most DCCs, and it's because they're extremely node based, right? Or sorry, extremely object oriented. So you can get the node in Houdini. You can provide the path. It auto completes with tab, and you can get that node for the tube. So this is the geometry node, and if I try to, let's say I want to, if I look at columns here, you can see the parameter name is cols, or COLS, and that's listed just right there. All I did is hover over it to highlight that. And you can get, again, like you just add a period and you can see everything that you can do to that node here in Houdini, because it's amazing. And so if I just do the parm and then I set that to, I get that parm, nothing happens. So what I almost want to ask the question, does anybody know what's wrong? And I think it's kind of devious to ask it, but because I want to see who's paying attention or who's had the ability to do this maybe. Or has ever in Houdini worked with the fact that, like, one of the major hints is that I grabbed the tube, right, from object space. So I grabbed this node, which is the node that gets passed in to the viewer state. But what we really want, and I don't see the chat blowing up, so I might just lean on, what we really want is this node, right? We really want the tube that's inside of there, not this tube that's inside of here. So we're gonna get this node passed to us from the scene viewer in these quarks. That's what this node, that's what this node is. Let me just close that. That's what this node is here in the quarks, because the HDA the custom HDA that we created is the geometry node. Inside of it is the node that we want to set the parameter on. So in order to do that, you just find the node, right, that we had, and you can just call node, and then I believe, let's see, it was called tube1. And just for clarity, we'll call this demo tube. So if we go to tube 1, you can see I just printed that out. and that's the path to that. And I'm going to also store that as a tube node. And then if I set the parm on that, oh, it's a none type. What did I do wrong? Tube one. Oh, tube one doesn't exist anymore because we called it demo tube. Right. So I wanted the geo node, and then for our tube node, I want that to be our geo node, which is node tube one. Right. Right. So now our tube node has the parameter calls. And you can see that again by if you just put param open space quotes, that suddenly you get all the parameters that are on that node. Super effective. I mean, like I said, there's just a plethora of reasons why Houdini is amazing, in my opinion. But yeah, so we have that parameter. Now, what can we do with it? You know, if we store that parameter, then we can also have a list of things that we can do with that parameter. The only one I want to do at this point is just set, right? I want to set it to say 5. And then you can see visually in the viewport that that changes to 5. So if I set that back to 3, so that's obviously what we're going to need to do to be able to control the columns of that node. So we'll go back over to our viewer state because now we have a plan, right? We know how to execute, and so we just have to execute on that plan. We have the scroll wheel that's telling us exactly what the parameter is that we need to set on there. So now we just need to get to that tube node. So our current node, and we'll just make this a little more explicit and call this our demo node. So it'll be just like the other node, but we want our tube node in here. And our tube node was, if you recall from this line right here, which I think that worked, or was it the other line? No, it was, yeah, that worked because that gave us this node. So, so yeah, our demo node tube one will give us the tube node, and then we can get the parm, which is again any parameter. You can see even the viewer state will autocomplete when you're on the right track, and then we can set that to the scroll wheel. Then we can apply. Fingers crossed nothing happened wrong, and if it did, usually you get a pop-up window real quick because it'll validate that. Then we can enter our state, and then when we scroll wheel, we can see that it increases the number of columns. So yeah, I just wanted to, like I said, I just wanted to give you guys a basic demo of kind of, that's my process in thinking when going through, and to kind of give you an introduction to viewer states. So I guess I can jump back into the chat and see what's up.
So Chris, some of these guys still haven't done scripting in general.
Okay.
So some of the questions that were coming up were, is Python in every program that's 3D? And I explained that in the chat that it's kind of a universal language that we use in 3D.
Yeah.
But like, I think what would really benefit them is to understand the time that you're saving your team.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah,
for the
definitely.
repetitiveness. So if you could talk a little bit about how this is going to increase the efficiency of what they're doing. So
Sure.
obviously they see the code and they kind of get the slider and they get that's part of it. I want you to talk a little bit more about the day-to-day.
Yeah, so the big part of this was just kind of connecting that visual representation to the kind of technical details. So, you know, what we're preventing the users from, so say an artist has 20 different nodes, we can hook up those parameters to one interface. So they don't have to go into each node, you know, reset them, go into that parameter, you know, adjust it by hand, and then come back out, go into another, you know, different, say there's another one of these that's, you know, in here somewhere. And so now they have to go into that one and, you know, dig it out. Like, essentially we can control them both. and as many of them as we need, just by utilizing the things like the viewer state properly. So it becomes like a problem solved for when things start to get exponentially bigger. Like again, you can work on you can work at a certain rate. Anyone can work at a very certain pace, with very manual tools. But what we try to do is push that to being able to work as fast as possible while still being able to have creative control. So yeah, when it comes to Python, it's one of the most approachable languages. It's not the fastest, and it's not the most assembly-like language. So it's not doing binary decisions, and it's not a lightning speed. But for making most of the tools, it doesn't have to be that fast, because usually what we'll do is make a tool in Python, and 9 times out of 10, the drawbacks of Python don't supersede the fact that the artist needs a tool immediately. So they could be in the middle of working, say for instance, one of the problems that we're trying to solve right now is how to create a block out of buildings in a timely manner, so you kind of get a gist of like, this is where I want everything, and then going from that block out to a skinned finished product. And that usually means by taking, instances of geometry, certain pieces of geometry, and applying them to your block out. So preventing the artist from having to go through and snap every single piece to every single other piece of geometry that they've done the block out. So they make a big square for a building, like maybe a city block is just a bunch of cubes. And then what we can do is go back through, based off of some tooling and some, some black magic there, and make those.
Chris, I think you got muted.
Was it something I said?
No.
So yeah, I mean, we're talking about working at breakneck speed. Let me make sure that, sorry, my VPN is turned off. We're talking about working at a rate of allowing them to quickly iterate, right? To work in a non-destructive way, and to be able to iterate very quickly on creating a level or creating an environment. And they don't need to be bogged down by how long it takes to get to the finishing touches, because we can automate that. And automation is a large part of what I do, but it allows them to say, again, build like a city street, and then we can put the finishing touches like the doors, the door frames. We can automate putting windows in. We can put the ceiling on, and essentially it allows them to get to that place of creative freedom that they can then just build with, the big pieces, and get the kind of whole horizon set up, and kind of get that working out. So does that follow?
No, that's great. You did great. Yeah. So I'm gonna turn back on my camera for a second. Hey, let's see if I can get back into our gallery view here. So, so just to kind of reiterate some of the stuff as Chris saying, because I know what, or most of the people are in the program. So what Chris's job is to increase productivity and to make ease of use for multiple departments, and also to organize tools to streamline. That's pretty much his day to day. So it's like what he does all the time. But you guys, scripting is something it's in every package. And what he was saying before about being technical versus artistic, you're going to decide that as you go through the program, what you like. And if I understand Chris correctly, when you started doing 3D or wanted to come to school for 3D, did you even do scripting at all before?
Nope,
School?
not even a little bit. I played video games, and I knew that I had an interest in video games and didn't want to be bored. And I went and got an art degree in ceramic sculpture. And I thought that that would carry over. And so, of course, I heard about modeling, and I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing. And after going through the modeling course, realized that I was pretty good at it, but I wouldn't say I was very good at it. And I was in the scripting class. I was surrounded by people that were confused, and I just realized I was helping them just as much as I was able to get I wasn't getting bogged down in the details, and I was able to help other people, kind of to help them work out the problems they were having. And so I just realized, oh, that maybe this is something I need to look deeper into, that I can do this. And yeah, and so I started researching what a TA was, and there's not many schools that show you the ropes, and most of the people that are TAs come from, I was an artist, and then I slowly became more technical, and now I write tools for those artists, for my former self, in a way. But I kind of always knew this was something that I wanted to do. This was right where I wanted to be. And it was mainly because of that initial scripting class where I just jumped on. I remember that my teacher at the time, Clavin, had 3 projects that he wanted us to do we had month-long courses. I'm not sure how long
It's the same.
your course, yeah. So we had 3 projects that you could choose any one of the 3, and I just did all 3. And so I realized then that I was like that when I was surrounded by people that were struggling to get one done, that maybe it's an avenue that I should dive deeper into. And it's really because I started looking at coding itself like an art form, which is super weird for most people to hear. But Python is a very unique experience, and because it's so legible, it becomes less of, there are some, again, it harkens back to the ceramics and these other interests. There are rules, and there are certain ways that you should do things, but there are edge cases, and there's ways around those rules, and sometimes you break the rules, just like in art. And I look at other people's code and not judge it in terms of right and wrong, but I look at other people's code and judge it in terms of just like I would art, of how would I do the same thing that they're doing, and use that as inspiration, just like I would if I was trying to imitate an art piece. So actually, I'll just turn this off real briefly. I guess you can't really see it, but behind my head is a piece. It's a reminder for me. It's a piece that I tried to imitate when I was in art school. But what it reminds me of is that imitation is I learned so much about how to paint from that process that I take that with me constantly. So it's very easy for people to judge, once you start coding and you get into it, to judge other people's coding decisions. But really, it's not a right or wrong. It's how they chose to solve that problem. And sometimes that is the most interesting part, is learning what they've done differently than you would have done, and taking that with you and then applying that. And so when I look at art, to me, it's an art form, and I've looked at it like that since the start. And I think that's really allowed me to step away from most of the barriers that people psychologically have with coding, in that it's not approachable because it's either too difficult, or there's too much lead up time, or it's boring. I don't want to do that because it's words. Really, it's an amazing experience when you can take someone's workflow, either and automate half of it, so they're clicking buttons everywhere, because these programs are made for people to streamline, essentially. So you click in 100 places to do one or two things, where you know, we can make the magic button, right? Well, that's what a lot of people claim as TAs, but we can make those workflows easier and faster. And then people can work at such a clip that they don't have to think about it, right? When you're in the design process, whether it's coding or whether it's modeling or whether it's deep in, you know, painting a texture or even lighting or any of those responsibilities, like you get into that flow and you stop, the world just stops turning, right? Time disappears. You can get so much more done than you normally could have. And whenever someone has to click even an extra time, that it breaks that, you know, when you can break someone out of their flow really easily. So I like to think that I can provide, you know, artists with a better way to get into that flow. And that understanding of the art process, I think, is what has always guided me through creating tools, you know, is wanting to provide that mentality, right, of making it really easy for them to work. As ethereal as that sounds, as like, you know, how far off in space, really at the end of the day, automation is also part of it too. So being able to automate, like take a bunch of files in a folder structure, have them provide one folder structure, you know, then you run through it all, grab all the loose files that are in there, keep all their file paths, and pass that to some upload mechanism, right? Some database somewhere. You know, those things, so they don't have to go through and select each one. Little things like that are super easy to do once you just know a few, you know, Python libraries. It doesn't really take much work either. It's very surprisingly approachable. I am not at all super intelligent, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. But I often look at it again like music. Like when I was growing up, people said I was talented, and I used to hate that term, or genius, because those two things don't often coincide with hard work. I just find an interest, and then you put your nose to it, and yeah, and then the you know, the work that you put in usually leads to the results that you get out. So, yeah.
No, I think that's great, man. So I agree with you completely, because I like to code, and some of your friends in the audience here, Malcolm, showed up, just so you know.
Did he?
He's yeah, he's here, and so there's obviously some coders in the room.
Nice.
But I think everyone will agree that does coding. Coding is art. I mean, so is writing a book, you know, so is taking a picture, you know, making pottery. These are all different art forms.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like I started doing some coding before I learned 3D, and I hated it. But once I started learning 3D and I had relevancy to why I wanted to learn coding, it made it so much easier to want to learn coding.
Absolutely.
For me.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing I could tell the room right now is it's a lot different now than just thinking about it as coding. Like like he said, like to give you an idea, maybe 20 to 25 hours sometimes can go into a rig, but you could script the whole process to be done in like a minute or less, you know, so.
I do have a thing on that. So when I was in your class, I went back through the class for the final. As in our finals, we went back through the class. And so I was the guy that I hated when I went through the class, where one of the tests that he had was to put together an IK rig, and you had to do it manually while they were sitting there. But if you could script it, you could script it. You could bring a script that could do it for you. And so there was a time limit. I think there was a 15 minutes time limit. And to set up an IK in 15 minutes, I mean, at that point in time for me, like it took a bit. But when I went through the second time, I had it scripted to a button, the whole thing. So when he said, "Okay, go," I put my hand up right away and said, "I'm done." And the whole class hated me. And I felt that because I was on the other side of that when I was in the class, and I had to do the IK manually. So, so yeah, that was just a fun little tidbit just, if you take interest, you'd be surprised where it can take you. And know that you don't have to do this stuff, you know, there and live. You can have a fallback plan that you can rebuild it. I mean, a lot of I have to admit, a lot of the reason that I got so interested is there was a visual effects artist that used to talk about how they had to do that in Maya in the early days, like Maya 6 or something, where like, you know, back in my day, all the white hairs would talk about how they would have to script everything because they, you know, that's how they interacted with Maya. That's how they interacted with 3D, was they had, you know, basically text that went into it. So I really took that to heart too, and like started picking apart things and like, oh, okay, so, you know, it always hasn't been as easy as this drop down menu, press this button, does this thing. You know, you'd have to write out that in words, and yeah. And so I took that with me a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much. For everybody in the room, he's going to be joining us in Discord for about, I don't know, 10 minutes in one of the chat channels if you want to come and hang out. But we're going to end the live presentation now. But everybody, thank you for the night and showing up. And Chris, obviously, thank you for showing up. And Kevin, thank you for talking about career placement as well. And I hope everybody has a great night. And I'll see you, Chris, and the others on Discord in the chat room.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll only respond if you write a very personalized message.
Professional personalized message, right?
Yes, absolutely professional.
Yeah, there you go. All right, everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.